Today, we're diving into a question that seems simple but is actually huge. Why do our buildings look the way they do? Let's take a quick trip through time to see what really shapes the world around us.
Have you ever really stopped and thought about it? You see a slick, modern glass skyscraper, and then you see a photo of, say, an ancient temple. How in the world did we get from that to this? It's an amazing story about us, our technology, our beliefs, and what we decide is important.
So, on one side, you have something like an ancient ziggurat. They were built with the most basic stuff imaginable, mud brick, and the whole point was to build a stairway to the heavens, to connect with the divine. And on the other side, a Frank Gehry building that looks like it's exploding in slow motion, using shiny titanium and glass to break all the rules. They're both buildings, right? But man, do they tell different stories.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. For most of human history, the most jaw-dropping buildings were all about power. They were built for gods, for kings, for empires. Architecture was how you showed everyone who was in charge, whether on Earth or in the heavens.
You can really see this incredible evolution of ambition here. It kicks off with the ziggurats in Mesopotamia, these huge, solid, man-made mountains. Then the Greeks come along with a totally new idea, mathematical harmony, giving us those classic, orderly columns. The Romans? Well, they were the master engineers. They took Greek style and supersized it, with things like the arch and concrete, building on a massive scale. And all that culminates in the Gothic cathedrals. Using pointed arches and flying buttresses, they made stone feel weightless, creating these soaring spaces just flooded with light.
And this quote just hits the nail on the head. Building a Gothic cathedral wasn't just about a bigger building. It was a spiritual mission. Every single piece of it, from the arches pointing up to the light streaming through those massive windows, was designed to make you look up and feel, well, awe.
And then, everything changed. The Industrial Revolution rolls in and just completely rips up the old architectural playbook. We get new materials, and with them, a totally new philosophy that would reinvent building from the ground up. Just think about it for a second. For thousands of years, if you wanted to build something big, you were stuck with heavy stuff like stone and brick. That meant your walls had to be thick, and you could only go so high. But then, all of a sudden, architects got this incredible new toolkit. Steel for a super strong but lightweight skeleton. Glass that could become the entire wall, and reinforced concrete you could pour into almost any shape. The old rules just didn't apply anymore.
But this was way more than just new toys to play with. It sparked a revolutionary way of thinking we now call modernism. It was a complete rejection of all the fancy decoration and historical styles of the past. The new mantra was simple, but radical. A building's design should be driven by one thing and one thing only: its purpose. You've probably heard the famous phrase, form follows function.
And maybe no one captured this idea better than the famous modernist architect Le Corbusier. He said flat out, "The house is a machine for living in." To him, buildings weren't supposed to be monuments or cozy cottages anymore. They were efficient, logical tools designed for a new, modern age. Le Corbusier didn't stop at just one house, though. He took this machine concept and scaled it up to an entire city with his radiant city idea. He saw old cities as messy and unhealthy. His fix? A radical, super organized layout. You've got massive, identical apartment towers for living, huge open parks for green space, and big highways connecting everything. It was this perfect, utopian vision of pure efficiency. But it turns out not everybody loved the idea of living in a giant machine. The cold, rigid logic of modernism eventually sparked a huge counterreaction. Architects and the public started to ask if maybe, just maybe, something important had been lost along the way. And that led to some really big questions. What happens when a city is perfectly functional but has no soul? What about personality? What about a connection to history? And, in the last few decades, the biggest question of all, what about the health of the planet?
So this reaction started to bubble up. First you had postmodernism, which cheekily brought back the history and color that modernism had banned. Then came deconstructivism, which took things even further. Architects like Frank Gehry didn't just bend the form follows function rule. They completely shattered it. A building like his Guggenheim in Bilbao isn't just a container for art. The building itself is a giant sculpture. It's all about emotion, movement, and surprise.
At the same time,
An even more urgent conversation was taking place, and it's all about sustainability. Now, architects have to think about more than just the client or the culture. They have to answer to the planet. That means redesigning everything, from the materials we build with, to how much energy a building uses, to how it can actually work with the environment, not against it.
This really shows you the insane juggling act a modern architect has to perform. It's not about one single thing anymore. Every project is this complex balancing act. How do you meet the building's function, use the latest technology, respect the local culture, and above all, make it sustainable? It's a huge puzzle, and there's never an easy answer.
So let's circle all the way back to where we started. After all that, why do buildings look the way they do?
It's because a building is never just one thing. Every single structure you see is the physical result of a conversation, and sometimes it's more like an argument between culture, technology, the environment, and its function.
And here's why that really matters to all of us. Architecture isn't some abstract art form. The buildings we choose to build, the ones we celebrate, the ones we pour our resources into, they are a literal reflection of our values. They're our story, written in steel and glass for future generations to read.
So the next time you walk down the street, don't just see a bunch of buildings. See the stories they're telling. And that leaves us with one final big question. What story will the buildings we're creating right now tell the world about who we are?